All right, guys, so now we're going to implement our database connection, but one thing I want to do before I do that is just stop the server for a second and just create a Git repository. And this is something that, you don't necessarily have to do right now, but I would recommend, and I'd recommend making commits as you move along. And then at the end, when we deploy to Heroku, you will need to use Git, and you will need to do this anyway. So first thing I'm going to do is create a file called .gitignore, because I don't want to include any node modules folders. So I'm going to say node modules / and save. Okay, and then down here, let's go ahead and git init. Obviously, you have to have git installed. So we'll initialize a repository, and then I'm going to do a git add all. Okay, a git add dot. And from here, let's go ahead and make a commit to our local repository with git commit -m, and then a comment. So I'm just going to say express server setup with initial routes. And there we go. So we've made our first commit. So I'm not going to keep doing this on camera, but I would suggest, when you feel like you need to, go ahead and make a commit. If you want to create a separate branch and get into all that, obviously you can do that if you want. But I don't want to spend too much time with Git. All right, so let's go ahead and npm run server again. And now we have our server running. So I'm going to now implement our database. So first thing I'm going to do is create a folder. Let's see. Let's just close all this stuff up for now. Let's create a folder in the root called config. And inside config, I'm going to create two files. One is going to be called default.json. Now, the purpose of this file is for global variables, right? So our Mongo URI, our connection string that I showed you back in the MongoDB lecture, is going to go here. So this is part of the config package. Remember, we installed this right here, config. So basically, if you create a default.json and you create some values, you have access to those values throughout your entire application. So we just need to create a JSON object here, and I'm going to say Mongo URI, and I'm going to set that to my Mongo URI, which I can go and get right here. If I click connect to your application, and I'm going to copy it. And then we're just going to paste that in right here. And you'll have to just add your password in. Mine's the same as my username. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. Now I'm going to create another config file which has to do with our database. This is going to be db.json. And this is the file where we're going to use Mongoose to connect to our database. So let's bring in Mongoose. I'm sorry, not db.json, db.js. Just wondering why there's no syntax highlighting. So let's say require Mongoose. And we're also going to bring in config because we need access to that global variable we just created. And then we're going to initialize a variable called db. And we're going to basically put in the Mongo URI, and we can do that with config.get. Since we brought in config, we have access to this .get, and we can bring in Mongo, Mongo URI. So that will grab whatever the value of this right here. So now that we have that, let's create a function. I'm going to use an arrow function here. I'm going to call it connectDB. And Mongoose actually returns promises. So I'll show you first without async await, but ultimately I do want to use async await. So let's do connectDB, and we can do mongoose.connect, pass in our DB. And there's a couple parameters that we need to add in order to avoid some warnings with the current version of Mongoose. You might not need these after a certain version, but as of right now, if you don't add these, you're just going to get some warnings in the console. So one is going to be use new URL parser. We're going to set that to true. Use create index. We're going to set that to true. And use find and modify, and we're going to set that to false. So make sure you add those, or you might get warnings depending on when you're watching this. So this is going to give us a promise. So we could do .then, and in here have actually I've been using async await so long I can't even remember how to do this. So mongoose.connect .then. I don't think this gives us anything. So we would just do this, and then we could do a console log and just say, just say MongoDB connected. Okay, now if there's something wrong, we can do a .catch. So let's actually just format this and do a .catch. And in here, this will give us an error. And then what I want to do is console error, the error.message, and then I just want to exit with failure. And we can do that by saying process.exit and then pass in a 1 that will exit with failure. Okay, so down here, and I'll refactor this for async await after, but if you don't want to use async await, you don't have to. So let's do module.exports connect DB. Okay, so now let's bring this into our main server file, so server.js, and up here we'll go ahead and bring in connect DB. We want to require in the config folder the DB file, and then we just need to call connect DB. So we'll do that right here. We'll say connect database and call connect DB. All right, so now if it works, down here we should see MongoDB connected, which we do. All right, so we know we're connected. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and refactor this a little bit. So this database right here, I'm gonna label this async. Since this is an arrow function, we want to put a sync right here. And then let's do, you know what I'll do is just push this down, and I'm going to open up a try catch, say error, and then in here we want to grab this, not the .then, just this part, and we can just await that. Okay, and if everything goes okay, then we're just going to console log, and we're going to say MongoDB connected. ... And then if something goes wrong, we want to do this. So in the catch, we'll go ahead and just do that. So to me, this looks much cleaner than this with the .thens and .catch and stuff. So I'm going to get rid of this. If you want to keep it that way, that's absolutely fine. But let's save, and we get the same result. We get MongoDB connected. Okay, and just to let you know, I will be using async await throughout the course. All right, so now that we have our database connected, in the next video, we're going to start to use that database by creating our route or adding the functionality to our route to register a user and get a token. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.